Alright, let's do it again. I recorded this like 2 times already and I failed, so here I am again. So, a few of you have asked me for a video talking about lines and curves and force lines and stuff. So I'm gonna cover the very basics of it in this video. What is it, how does it work, how can you apply this to your sculpts, and this kind of stuff. Okay, so basically first we're gonna draw some lines because that's how it works. So lines. Okay, so lines. There are a few types of lines. So first type obviously is like the basic basic horizontal straight line, which is great, but is really boring, so we don't want to do them, especially for characters. We want to make characters alive and moving, so we are gonna try to avoid straight horizontal line as much as we can. So let's see with verticals. Okay, it's not much better, so nah, and I'm gonna spoil you, but yeah, oblique straight lines are no good either, so you don't want to do them. Basically, we're gonna avoid straight lines. Why? Because curves are way more interesting, and we're gonna see when it is good practice to use some straighter lines, not straight but straighter lines, and when it is better to avoid them. So why do we use curves? Because curves can go in any kind of shapes and forms and lengths, and so we're gonna be able to create way more interesting stuff with them. So here, for example, just a few. We have the basic curve, we have the very straight one, we have the very bendy one, you have the straight then bendy, you have many kinds of curves, and that's what makes them appreciable for design, is that you can add very much variety with them. So first try to avoid parallels and straight lines. Avoid parallels and straight. You don't want that. Okay, so next thing, we are going to create some curves now. So let's make some curves. Here is a curve, and here is a curve, and here is a curve, and a curve, and a curve, and a curve. Okay, so that's better, but it's still very boring. So we are going to try to avoid, as we've seen, repeating lines. Avoid repetition, because you're basically saying the same story over and over again. So yeah, just avoid that. It's boring, and you want to make something interesting. So yeah, you just cannot make a character with just repeating stuff. It doesn't work. So yeah. Okay, so fourth thing, we are gonna try to avoid symmetry. Why is that? Because yeah, as you can see here or here, that's no good either. You cannot, it's boring. Like, it's basically, if you try to draw a character with this kind of lines, you're gonna end up with this kind of character you see with this kind of hand, and yeah, that's super ugly, and you really don't want that. Okay, so we are gonna try to avoid symmetry. Okay, symmetry you don't want. Okay, so what should we do instead? So we are gonna try to make add some variety. And how do you add some variety? To add some variety, it's easy. You can just add a rhythm. So add variety. So What is variety? For example, if I draw one curve, I can draw another one like this, and another one like this, and like this. And you see, no two curves are the same. And this way, I can easily create a flow and a responding curves. You see, there is a flow going from this point to this curve, and following this one and this one. With using this basic principle, the variety and flow, that's a good thing. Okay, so using this variety and flow and rhythm, you can really guide the eye of the person who's gonna see your piece. You can really make the eye of the viewer just go through your whole piece, actually. So we're gonna see a few examples of that. So yeah, just flow and rhythm. Just remember this basic principle. If you avoid all this, you're gonna have some flow and rhythm. Actually, that's quite easy. So here, flow and rhythm, responding curves. All right, so also try to avoid repetition, as we've seen. So try to avoid making always the same and the same and the same and the same curve over and over. It's just not good looking, and you don't want that. So add variety. Okay, so then we're gonna try to talk about I'm gonna talk about C curves and S curves. Okay, so what are those? Basically, C curves is talking about a curve who is shaped like a C, and S curve is for talking about a curve that's shaped like an S. So basically, that's a C curve, that's a S curve, and there's a trap here. So basically, a S curve is like two C curves. All right. But there's an inverted one. So okay, so I'm gonna talk sometimes about S curves and some C curves. Just remember this. Okay, so let's dive in. Just try to note this, all of this. Okay, all right, so let's talk about variety and flow using good old David here. So here is David by Michelangelo, and as you can see, David has a super cool pose, which is very simple. You don't really need some extreme poses to have a good and interesting piece. But here we are gonna see what principles are playing here, so we can have this amazing piece. So first thing first, when I'm talking to you about curves here, I'm gonna talk first about two levels of curves. So we're gonna have the attitude curves, and those will be the curves that define the pose of really the pose of the character. So for example, here there's one for the leg here, and one for the torso, one for the head, and there's another one here for this leg, one for the arm, and another one here, another one there. So here, if I remove the image, here you see I have a very dynamic pose with some responding curves here, that you have one here, one there, and one there. All right, so these are the attitude curves. All right, so they are defining the movement of your character. Okay, and I'm gonna pick another color for this. All right, let's have some green maybe. Okay, and there are gonna be some what I'm gonna call anatomy curves, but really it can be any kind of secondary shapes that are not defined by the pose. For example, here on the leg it's very visible, like, oops, I'm gonna take something brighter. All right, so here, for example, on the leg you have one curve here, and you have its opposite there. All right, and you have another one here and the opposite there, and you have one here, one there, one on the ankle, etc., etc. And you can flow through the whole body using this curve. All right, so that's why David is such an amazing piece. Oops, it's because curves everywhere. All right, so here's another one and another one, and there's again another one here and another one there. All right, and as you can see, you really have this kind of stuff everywhere on these sculpts, and it's amazing. And you should love Greek sculpture and ancient masters studies because it's really amazing. All right, so here you have the basic principles, and how do you actually create this kind of stuff? That's quite easy actually. You just have to make sure that the curves are following each other's attitude and okay. So all right, so here's okay with David. So as we've seen earlier, a good way to create variety is to simply remove symmetry and create some contrast between the areas. So here on this pose, which is as we've seen earlier, a contrapposto. What is a contrapposto? It's actually what defines this kind of pose, which is not symmetrical. Okay, so contrapposto with two P's here. Okay, so what's a contrapposto? It's a pose which is not symmetrical and is going to add some variety from one side to another. So here, for example, you see that the weight is distributed more on his on it's Neptune, I think. Yeah, it's Neptune. His weight is distributed more on his right foot here. So there's the weight balancing on this foot, so the hip is tilted here. And since the hip is tilted this way, the shoulders are going to be tilted the other way here, which creates one curve for the leg, one for the body, and one for the head. Right? So that's the same principle as we've seen on David, and that's the basic of contrapposto. If you want to avoid some very stiff poses like T poses and stuff, just tilt the hips and the shoulders, and you're gonna automatically get something more interesting. And same for the arms. You see he's got an arm raised and another arm down. That's just basic contrast and just not just breaking symmetry. And it's way more interesting even anatomy wise, because you're gonna have to make some tension in some muscles on one side and some tension in other muscles on the other side. Like here the biceps is tense on this arm but not on this one. And yeah, so that's what you should make some contrapposti, I guess. Okay, so let's talk about something else. All right, so curves again. Let's get back to curves. Okay, so it's here we're gonna talk a bit more about the flow and about the rhythm. Okay, so for these examples, I've picked some photos of dancers. And you often hear about the feminine curves and the gracious curves of the dancer and stuff. We're gonna see why that is, and yeah, why how the curves here and all the design principles are put in good use. All right, so here first we have some obvious attitude curves here. So, oops. Right on the good layer here. Okay, so one here, one there, one here. Okay, so here we have one, and and another one here. All right, so yeah, just by having this, you see, I didn't draw much lines here, but the attitude is there, and you don't need more. So that's really the important part of the posing and of the attitude, is really have some strong attitude curves, because it's gonna add so much dynamism to all your poses, and it's gonna increase the liveliness of your pieces by a real ton. So yeah, so these are the attitude curves, and we're gonna see some more curves and more principles. All right, so first you have, as we've seen earlier, the anatomy curves. So here, one here, boom, one there, one for the butt, and one for the torso, and one here, one there, and I could do that all day long, but I won't. So yeah, basically you have to put this into account. So here on this pose, you really have this this very strong feel of curves responding to each other, and the eye being guided from this hand, you see, to this curve, and this one to this one, here to this one, and stuff. And so the eye is gonna go all the way through the piece in a really easy way, and is gonna really be guided, and that's what you want. You want the eye of the viewer to see your whole piece at once, and being able to read it as much as you can. So to emphasize this kind of curve flow, you can break it. So how do you do that? You add some breaks, actually. So here, for example, you've got a very strong one here on the foot. All right, so you have the curve of the leg. So you have one curve here, one curve there, the curve of the I've forgotten this word, but the curve of the foot here and there and there. But here you have an angle. That here is an angle, and that's a break in the curve. So here you really have this break. You also have it here. You see, you have this break. You have the curve of the lower back and the curve of the upper back, and here you have a break. You also have one here. You have the leg curve here. You have this curve here, and this one there, and here you have a break. And this break in the pose is really important. Why is it? Because it's gonna create some contrast. Because you see, if the eye is flowing and flowing again, it's not gonna stop anywhere, and it's not gonna it will just flow through the piece and not stop, and it doesn't create some areas of interest. So what you want is sometimes just add this kind of break into your pose, so so you can just better create some interest. So here, for example, you have the curve of the arm here, which is very soft and very delicate, and boom, here you have a break. And you have one here as well, and same on this pose here. You have the curve of the back and the gentle curve of the arm, and here, boom, you have a break. And that's important, because by creating this kind of breaks, you're gonna, as I've said, just create some areas where the eye can catch, and really put into the thinking of, okay, this pose is dynamic and stuff. It's not just lines flowing like water and it just goes away. You have some areas of interest. So when we evoke this kind of stuff, you have some you often have some people who are going to talk about feminine curves and very elegant and gracious curves. Yes, it's gracious, it's elegant, and if you push these principles as their absolute maximum, yes, you're gonna have some very feminine forms. But the very same principles apply to men, actually. Like, oops, sorry. Like this guy. I'm gonna try and make this bigger. Otherwise, it's gonna be hard to see. Okay. So here, for example, you have a very strong attitude curve here in his whole body. Here you have one here on his leg and one on his arm. Where is my cursor? Yeah, here, and another one there. And as you can see here again, oops, I drew on the wrong layer again, sorry. So as you can see here, you really have the same, really the same principles and the same curves in action, but it's a guy, it's a male, and you see again these curves are very dynamic. I have a very lively pose, even if I did only basically it's a stickman now. It's not even a stickman, it's just some lines, but you have this sense of pose and dynamism, and that's what you want. Okay, so here. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about the strength of the curves. So to do that, we're gonna get back to this girl. Okay, and so here she. Okay, so here you see there are, if I draw the attitude curves, I have a few ones. So I have the very obvious one on the leg here, which is actually quite straight. One on the back, which is also quite straight. And I also have some more on the arm here who are a bit more relaxed, and one on the hand who is really gentle and soft and really relaxed, you see. So here's the principle. Actually, you have a different kind of strength into your curves. So if your curves, for example, is like this, it's not going to be a very dynamic curve. It's more like a spaghetti, which would be too cooked, and yeah, so sometimes you want that. But if you want to give energy to your pose, you need some curves that are really dynamic, and to make them more dynamic, you need to make some straight points. So here, for example, here's a very dynamic curve. Here's like very dynamic curve here. You also can make this, and this curve is also very dynamic because here it's quite straight, but the curved point here, the curved area, is actually very bendy. So you can make some very bent curves and still keep this feeling of really strong energy. It's very visible on this guy here. I'm gonna erase all of that. Like, as you can see here on this leg, the bend is really strong, but the tension is really there. In the fingers, for example, the bend is really not, is way more relaxed and subtle, and so you can feel it. Actually, you can feel it because the curve is more soft. It's more tranquil, actually. So here is this principle about really tension and energy. So yeah, and doing this, you can really using this principle, you can really create some very good poses with a lot of energy and a lot of tension and a lot of flow, and even with several characters. like on this photo, for example, from the amazing photographer Vadim Stein. I'll write his name. Vadim Stein here. Okay, we're gonna break down this photo just a bit. Okay, so we obviously have some big strong curves here on this guy. We've got one here, one there. On the girl, same for the girl. We have one here, and you can see that these curves are responding to each other. And like here, for example, you can even go as far as saying that there's only one big curve on this model, on this photo, which would be like something like this. And that's the flow of the pose is really great, because everything is made of strong curves and breaks and strong yeah, curved areas and some breaks and stuff, and it's really cool. Like here in the back you have this curve and the break for the butt, and then a straight line for the waist, and another one for the calf, and the break for the I've forgotten this word, but yeah, I don't know the word anymore, but yeah, you heard me. So yeah, and even the anatomy curves are very strong. Like okay, what I drew in blue is actually anatomy curves, but here, there, and you see these kind of curves here that are really very elegant and flowing and going through the image. This is very strong, and you can really make some great poses by just again making these principles obvious. All right, so I'm gonna erase that. And again, same principles are good for animals. Like for example, this horse. Again, it's just one curve and another curve, and here there's a break, but goes into a curve here, and again a curve and a curve, and here. So as you can see here, it's very much like same principle as for humans, just really it's yeah, curves and curves and curves again and again, and yeah, using these curves, you're gonna add some really life. You're really gonna add life to your sculpts. Okay, no, so here on this dog is very obvious. You have these curves everywhere. Don't even need a paint over here, but yeah, here are the principles. Just yeah, I'm gonna note everything. So straighter, more energy, straighter again, more energy, breaks, add breaks. But be careful with breaks, because at some points you're gonna try to add some breaks or not, and there's gonna be a feel like you see here, this for example, we don't know if it's a break that is intentional, or if it's just a break that or if you just fail your curve actually. So if you make a break, just make it crystal clear that it's a break. You see, we don't want to have to ask the question, was this intentional or not? So yeah, try to be careful about that, and it should be fine. So here are the basics of the design principles we've seen. So one last thing, these are basic rules, but you can break them actually, and sometimes you want to break them. For example, Pixar did a very good job on their characters for Up. Like, take Mr. Fredricksen, for example. He's an old guy, he doesn't want to move from his home, he doesn't want to move, there's no movement in this person, he doesn't want movement. And so he's all square and straight lines, like here, really. He's only squares and straight, and everywhere, even his fingers are straight. Here, straight, everything is straight on Mr. Fredricksen, you see. So yeah, you can really create some appealing designs without curves and flow, but it should be justified, actually. On these characters, they did a very good job about this, because they even got as far as making the walking stick of Mr. Fredricksen, so the object that allows him to move around. So here, the guy is square, but when he needs to move, he uses a round object. So there are curves and rounds and around again, and around and round and again. So yeah, it's really well done. And on the opposite side, you have Russell here, who's like a very bouncy guy. He always runs everywhere and stuff, and he's all round. He's round and round and round, and his hands are round, and his trumpet is round and round and round and round everywhere. So yeah, you can reconvey a character design and personality through these principles. And yeah, I hope this video was helpful, actually. So yeah, how long is it? 25 minutes. Great. So yeah, I hope it helped, and here, goodbye.